lots of tidbits and wisdom to teach us in His Word. And we've been studying, there's lots of things to study in God's Word, but He laid upon my heart right before January the 1st of this year, when He laid upon my heart the slogan, Beginnings of Plenty in 2020. And we kind of did a non-democratic thing this time because we didn't vote. I just felt that God wanted that to be our slogan for the year, and I asked John and Reva if they thought that was okay, and it was on a Sunday, so didn't mean to leave you out, Josie, but but anyway, so that's the slogan for our year, and that's the first message that I taught on. It has to do, one of the beginnings it's almost a tradition every year, is for people to study their budget, to see where they are financially, and see if there's any opportunities for change that would be good from the last year. I think the reason why we picked January the 1st is we start getting all the things like W-2 forms and different things. And if you file a tax return, not everybody, I guess, is required to do that. Depends on your income and stuff and your age. Anyway, that's a good time because you gather up all this information that's very helpful for figuring out a budget. And so Beginnings of Plenty can apply to all kinds of things, but we're going to focus, we're doing, I don't know how many parts this is going to end up being, but we're doing the focus on Beginnings of Plenty in regards to our finances. Because as we know, when you've worked a great portion of your life, if you reflect back on it, you did that for the sole purpose of earning money so that you could buy the things you needed and wanted. And we give a great deal of time in our life to that. And God recognizes that. And I forget how many I said before in a previous lesson, but there are many, many scripture verses that pertain to prosperity, finances, wealth. Being blessed is another way that's worded. You can be blessed in lots of ways. You can be blessed in your health and stuff, but we're focusing on the financial part of it. So being blessed in your finances so that you have the ability in your body, you're blessed physically, so you have, and talent-wise, so that you have the ability to work somewhere to get the money that you need to take care of yourself and your family. And then, so that was part one, and part two was God's stewards. And for years, and I still say it because it's a habit, I say my house, my car, my shed, my yard, my dishes, my this and my that. But you know what? When we leave this physical body, we don't get to take any of that with us. And the main thing that we need to keep in mind is God created everything, so it's His. If you really reflect upon it, everything that we have individually is God's. And He has made us stewards over those things. He allowed us to have those things, and He made us stewards. So that was part two. We are stewards or managers over the things God has let us have. And some people, just like in the story of the talents in Matthew, I think it's 25, each one is given a certain amount of things or talents or whatever, and God expects us to do the best we can with it, not only to take care of it, but to see if we can bring increase from it, do better. And we find that out from that story on the talents. Now that was, let's see, January 1st was Beginnings of Plenty. January 29th, I taught on God's stewards. And February the 9th, I taught on Know the State of Your Flocks. And all of this is under prosperity or biblical finances from scriptures. To know the state of your flocks in order, whether you're building a home, whether you're planning a vacation, whether you're planning on paying your bills, to be wise and smart, you need to start with knowing the state of your flocks. Which, that was an agricultural area over there in Bible times. So that's why they used flocks or cattle or sheep, goats, whatever. When you had a lot of it, it represented wealth. If you had a lot of sheep, goats, and cattle and whatever, they considered you rich. And but you have to know the state of your flocks. So nowadays, of course, most of us, we might have a cat or a dog or a bird or a fish, or a lizard or a turtle or something like that, but nothing that really represents wealth. What represents wealth in modern days is money. And it's not shameful to teach or preach about money. Actually, there's more taught on this topic, on money, finances, prosperity, wealth, whatever you want to call in the Bible, than there is on a lot of other really good topics that we consider more important than money. So knowing the state of our flocks means we need to know where we are right now. Are you doing okay and getting your bills paid, or are you struggling? Are you having to rob Peter to pay Paul? Now, I'm telling you about some stuff that I used to have to do. I used to, raising 7 kids, we just never seemed to have enough money to make ends meet. And it seemed like I was always robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they say, paying this bill and leaving this one behind. And then next time I get some money, I pay on this one and leave that one behind, because I didn't have enough to pay both of them at the same time. So I had to juggle it. I had to call the bill collectors and make arrangements to pay things late. And, of course, they always add these late charges, which makes it like a snowball going down a hill. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that and the interest when you have credit cards and stuff like that, which I had credit cards and we had loans and just all kinds of things, just trying to make it, because I couldn't work outside the home, because then we'd have to get babysitters, and the babysitters wanted more money than I could earn. So it made sense for me to stay home and Chuck to earn all the money. So he went and did the best he could to get the most expensive, the highest paying job he could get for his education and his abilities, which was over the road truck driving. Well, God has brought me a long ways since then, and I am now debt-free. And it was a long, hard struggle. But some of it I accomplished with Chuck's help and his prodding and his encouraging and his teaching before he passed away. But after he passed away, I accomplished even more because I followed what he told me to do. And what he told me to do followed what scriptures told me to do, okay? And some of it he tried to teach me while he was alive, and because he was on the road, I was in charge of finances in our family. Well, I didn't always obey him, so I was disobeying him and God both when I did that. Like, I didn't always tithe. Every time I didn't tithe, the bills got worse, or so it seemed. When it's not a magic formula, And it's not because God needs the money. It's because it helps us realize that we need to give. It's for our own good. But when we obey God and trust and do what God tells us to do in his word and then trust God to do the rest, he blesses us. He doesn't always bless us the same way. Sometimes our car goes more miles than what anybody else's car ever does before it breaks down. Maybe the washing machine hasn't had to be replaced in years. I've experienced that. And the one I bought at a time that lasted forever and ever and ever, it seemed, it only broke down once, and it was cheaper to fix it than to buy a new one. And when we bought it in the first place, it was used, and it lasted and it lasted and it lasted. So, I mean, sometimes he'll bless you that way instead of helping you get more money. Or maybe he'll cause you to get a raise at work. Or in Josie's situation, more clients that want their hair cut or affirmed or whatever. Just each situation is a little bit different. Sometimes he'll help you when you're shopping to run across something that is at a real good price, and it's not something that you want necessarily, but something that you need. And it's okay to have some things that you want, but you've got to have your needs met first. And I've known people who, and I have been guilty of this in my past, I've known people who they thought, well, I work hard, I deserve this, and they went out and they got something that they thought they wanted, but they let their needs slack, and so they didn't have everything they needed that month to pay the bills and pay for food and all that. And so there were difficulties that resulted in that, consequences that resulted in not making the right choice. But one of the things that Chuck had told me, and it teaches us throughout the scriptures, had to do with, he told me, he said, I want you to pay off everything. If I go first, if I die, which I hope not, because I know somebody's going to get to live forever, but he said, but if I leave this physical house, this body, and go to my spiritual home, the new body, and live with Christ, we have life insurance, and I want you to take that life insurance, and I want you to pay off anything and everything, car, house that has interest attached to it. Pay off all loans. And then I don't want you to get another loan for any reason. If you can't save up the money and pay cash for it, then you don't need it. And then he said, and I want you to cut up all the credit cards. You can have a debit card because it's just attached to your checking account, and it makes some companies feel better if they can take a debit card. But if you don't watch your bank account and you use the debit card incorrectly, you can cause yourself into a snowball effect of bounced checks, and that's not good. So you still have to keep track of it like you do your checks in your checkbook in order not to suffer consequences. So, a lot of the things the scriptures teach us is just wisdom and understanding and common sense. And we all know the book of Proverbs is full of encouragement on wisdom, knowledge, and common sense. And so, anyway, when you know the state of your flocks, you know where you are, and you look at that list, because I forgot to finish that thought. When you look at the income you've got coming in, the bills or the money that has to be paid out, not just bills, but, like going to the grocery store and getting gas, expenses. Bills are more like your loans and your credit cards and stuff like that, and the living expenses is more like your utilities and your gas and your food and whatever it is that else you want to add to your groceries. In the groceries, I always include stuff like hair care and cleaning and stuff like that when I say groceries. So those are things that you never pay off because it's an ongoing need. But anyway, So I did what he told me to, and it's amazing how much easier it is to come up with the money for utilities and the money for expenses like gas and food and stuff when you're not giving some creditor what you owe them plus interest. And it frees up your money, makes it to where if you don't make rash decisions, you can eventually get to the point where you make wiser decisions and you only buy what you need and you buy it with cash, and every once in a while you give yourself a treat to buy something that you want. But when you do it that way, you don't have to cringe when the phone rings and think it's a bill collector trying to give you a hard time. And you feel free. You don't feel that burden anymore. And by following what he said and what scriptures say, I feel free. And so I want to make sure everybody else, you have to grade your own paper. You may already feel free. Your situation may be just the way it's supposed to and line up with scriptures perfectly. But I have not always been in that situation. And so I would love to see everybody in the world be in that situation. But everybody has to make their own mind up of what they're going to do, how they're going to live, and what they consider important. So we're going to look in Proverbs and see what Proverbs would have us to know, because Proverbs is written by King Solomon, or most of it is, and he was considered the wisest king. He could have asked God for a lot of things, but he asked God to give him wisdom, and God did. And he was so wise in many ways. And I know he would. And I said he was wise. I didn't say he was perfect in every way. But anyway, we're going to focus in. There's some things pertaining to money and wealth that are true for every area of our life. And one thing is wisdom. Walking in wisdom is true for every area of our life. And I looked up wisdom, and basically what it said is decisions you make now that you will be happy with later. And in scriptures, I forgot to write down the verse, but it says the fear, meaning respectfulness. It's not really fear like a horror movie. It's fear like you respect the person so much that you don't want to make them unhappy by doing anything against them. The fear or great respect of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And that song, "The Eyes of God Are Upon You," my mom taught me that when I was a little girl, before I ever came to know the Lord as my personal Savior. She said, God is everywhere. He sees all. He knows all. He even knows what you're thinking. So you can fool me all you want, but you will never fool God. You can hide things from Mom all you want, but you will never fool God. He sees it all. So you might as well just try your best with his help to do what's right in the first place. And then you don't have to worry about trying to hide what you've done. So that's what she would tell me. Good, wise, sound advice, I would think. Okay. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 1. And I'm going to read verses 1 through 4. Sometimes I go back and forth and let you guys read, but I think tonight I'm just going to go ahead and read it from the Amplified, and then if you want to comment on any of it, if you jot a little note to yourself at the end, then I'm going to open it up for comments. But chapter 1, verse 1 through 4 says in the Amplified, the Proverbs, truths obscurely expressed maxims of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. Verse 2, to know skillful and godly wisdom and instruction, to discern and comprehend the words of understanding and insight. Verse 3, to receive instruction in wise behavior and the discipline of wise thoughtfulness, righteousness, justice, and integrity. Verse 4, that prudence, good judgment, astute common sense may be given to the naive or inexperienced who are easily misled, and knowledge and discretion, intelligent discernment to the youth. And then I didn't put down 5, but 5 says the wise will hear and increase their learning. A wise person doesn't think he knows it all. He or she. A wise person listens and heeds and takes advice of those more experienced than they are, or maybe more educated than they are. They listen and they learn. They consider. Now, sometimes we get advice that's not good for us, but if you're wise, you'll consider what people say, you'll consider what the Word says, and weigh them against each other, and if it agrees with the Word, then it's wise for you to consider that as something you should do. And John preached a few Sundays ago, I think it was on a Sunday, about be doers of the Word. It's okay to read the Word. It's okay to study the Word. In fact, it's recommended that we study it. We read and study together. And to know the Word and all that. But if we know it but we don't do it, it's not any good to us or anybody else. And y'all know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But anyhow, so we need to know what is in God's Word. Because if you don't know, then it'll be harder for you to do the right thing. So, these verses 1 through 5 teach us that wisdom is full of prudence. I looked up prudence, good management. And we talked about the talents, managing what God has set us to be stewards over. Prudent people are balanced and conduct themselves wisely. Okay. Let's look at chapter 2 and verse 20 and 21. Chapter 2, 20 and 21. So you will walk in the way of good men, that is, those of personal integrity, moral courage, and honorable character, and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright, those who are in right standing with God, will live in a land, and those of integrity who are blameless in God's sight will remain in it. To me, basically summing it up, whether you're talking about money or relationships or health, we just need to study to learn what is right and do what is right. That's the wise thing to do. That's the way to make sure that what you do today, you'll be happy that you did that. Tomorrow you'll think, oh, that was the thing, I did that. All right. Now let's go. Let's see. Let's go to chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. Chapter 1 was to know. Chapter 2 is to receive. And chapter 3 is to remember. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your hearts keep my commandments. That's verse 1. And 2 is for the length of days and years of life worth living, and tranquility and prosperity, the wholeness of life's blessings, they will add to you. When we choose to do right, the consequences of choosing right usually come with great blessings of some kind or another. So they lead to prosperity. Now, I'm not talking about get rich quick and trying to have the biggest house and the biggest car, but when you are able to meet the needs of yourself and your whole family and not be pressured because of lack of finances, it's just it is a prosper. It's a wealth that comes from God when that happens. It's a blessing from God. And so, anyway, chapter 3, verse 6. Let's read it. In all your ways, know and acknowledge and recognize him, and he will make your path straight and smooth, removing obstacles that block your way. 7 says, do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord with reverent awe and obedience, and turn entirely away from evil. This is very important. We need to recognize that when things are going well with us, physically, spiritually, relationship, whatever, that the root of it came from God. He gave us what was necessary and helped us learn how to use what was necessary to benefit. And it came from him. He gave Josie the talent of he gave her the talent and the ability to go learn and get her education and learn how to cut hair and how to fix hair. And she went out and she did it. And she has her own salon. So he also gave her whatever skills and education. You know, he led her to those places so that she would learn how to conduct a business, so that she could provide what she needed. And she's done well with that. Each one of us can grade our own paper, and we can think of things that God has given us that have made it possible. You know, like he gave us a sound mind to make it possible for us to make good and wise decisions. And as we study the Word and gain knowledge, we will make right decisions. And when you make right decisions in regards to whatever wealth God has given you or allowed you to have, then not only does it keep or sustain, but many times it increases. Did I say that to where it's understandable, or did I muddy the water? I don't know. But anyway, I know of a person who, at one time during his life, he left God out of what he was doing. And from outward appearances, he was doing well. But when it all was said and done, he said, "Look what I have done." Like the man that had so much that he had to build more barns to put his extra in. Look what I have done. Look what I have done. Left God out of it. Should have been saying, "Thank you, God, for enabling me to do what I have done." And over the years, he lost it all because he was doing it all by his own effort. He wasn't giving God credit for helping him. He wasn't asking God for any help. He refused to ask God for help because he could do it himself. Reminds you of a 2-year-old trying to button his shirt down the front, and he's got it all wrong, and you try to help him. "No, I do it myself." Well, that, I guess, is, spiritually speaking, was the stage he was in. But anyway, so it's not wise. God wants to be a part of everything in our life. The big stuff, the little stuff, the in-between stuff. He wants to be a part of our finances. He wants to be a part of our relationships. He wants us to be a part of spiritual matters in our life. He wants to be a part of everything in our life. And if we include him in everything in our life, we are off to a good start to have a good finish. So, all right, now we have all right, now let's read 9 and 10. "Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your crops," or income, or increase, however way you want to word it. "Then your barns will be abundantly filled, and your vats will overflow with new wine." So, I'm not a wine drinker, so I don't really care to have vats overflowing with new wine. But what it's not to be taken literally that way. It's when we give unto the Lord, whatever is given to us, be it money or good health or whatever, we use our good health or use our money to help out God's causes, things of the Lord, to give. God doesn't really need that money. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns everything. He made everything. Guess whose benefit it is to help us learn to not be selfish and greedy? We need to learn to give. And it may be, we just need to learn to include that in our financial plan, the giving that we do. And you may not feel like you need to tithe anymore because that was Old Testament. But when Jesus paid the debt he paid, this is how I think. And you can think the same way or you can think a different way. That's between you and God. But I think that because of what Jesus did on the cross, I should be able to do better than what was required in the Old Testament on the tithing. And I try to do that most of the time. Now, I won't say I do it all the time because I'm sure there's times I haven't. But you just grade your own paper. And I have found that when I'm figuring up my bills, if I figure out what I'm giving to God and God's work first, and then I take what's left and I figure out how much is going to this, and this, including food and gas, I somehow get it all covered. And Joy has testified this for the church even. There's been times when on paper it didn't look possible to pay all the bills that were paid by church. And I've experienced that personally. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but there's been times in my life that, it says in Scriptures to seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then these things shall be added unto you. That's not in Proverbs, but when we do that, when we put God first, when we put things of God first, things that are right first, and giving is one of those things, God helps us with the rest. Now, we can't get out of balance. We got to be wise and study and figure out, how to do this and be open to God. You can be out of balance with good things, and you can be out of balance with bad things. So we just need to keep that in mind. And sometimes when we're unhappy and it seems like we're doing everything right, when we're unhappy, we need to ask God, am I out of balance somewhere? Maybe you're doing something too much. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it does to me. But anyway, verse 9-10 says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruit of your crops or income. And then verse 10 says, then your barns will be abundantly filled, and your vats will overflow with new wine. And to me, what that means is you will have more when you learn to put God first in every area, including your finances. You will have more than you need, and you will have extra. It'll be overflowing, like fill my cup, Lord. It will be overflowing to where you have more to share with others and help others. And it's funny, you give and then it's given to you to give more. I mean, God's economical way of doing things, just like the woman who had meal and oil left, and she was going to fix it one more time. She just had a little bit left, and she's going to fix it for her and her son, and they were just going to die and starve to death because they were going through a famine in the land. And anyway, the man of God came by and said, fix me first. He wasn't being selfish. It was a principle. And she obeyed him, and she fixed his first. Then when she went back to the barrel of meal and the vats of oil or whatever it was that she had, it just never ran dry. There was still plenty. They got to eat for days after that. It's like the loaves and fishes and things like that. When you give of what you got and ask God to bless the rest, He does. And so that is just a principle that's in the Old Testament and the New. All right, let's go to chapter 3, verse 25 and 26. Do not be afraid of sudden fear, nor of the storm of the wicked when it comes, since you will be blameless. For the Lord will be your confidence, firm and strong, and will keep your foot from being caught in a trap. Again, when we consult with God first, He leads us in the right direction, no matter what we're talking about, finances or other things besides finances. And the result is we have confidence. We have confidence that everything's going to be okay. We have trust in God because we put God first and we're doing it His way. And He's made promises to us, and it'll keep us from getting caught in a trap. Now, one such trap, someone else that I know, is to make ends meet. He would go to one of those get along quick places. Oh my goodness, the interest that they charge is outrageous. That's like quicksand. It sounded good right now because he had made some wrong decisions And that's what got him in the bad spot he was in financially, was the wrong decisions. So here he goes and makes another wrong decision that pulls him into that bad situation even deeper and deeper and deeper, till the pit was so deep it was hard to believe he could ever get out. So when we do things God's way, it keeps our feet out of those traps and other such traps. And I could go off on some rabbit trails right here, but I'm trying to remind myself, focus on the finance part. Anyway, we need to remember these things. And then verse 28 in chapter 3 says, "Do not say to your neighbor, 'Go and come back, and tomorrow I will give it,' when you have it with you." Okay, to me, whether it's talking about helping a neighbor or whatever it is that is the right thing to do, we should never procrastinate. Procrastination will get us into deep trouble. Like, for instance, if we have a bill to pay and we have the money in the checking account to pay it, we need to pay it right away before we're tempted to spend it in the wrong places and then not have any to pay that bill. Procrastination gets you in trouble. We need to trust in God and do things His way, then we can be confident everything's going to turn out good. All right. Let's go to chapter 4 and verse 4 and 5. Oh, and by the way, chapter 4 starts out with a lot of these chapters. This is something I was kind of playing with, and I thought it was kind of neat. If you read the beginning first few verses of every one of the Proverbs, it'll say something like, "Hear, O children, the instruction of your fathers. Listen, remember, be attentive, keep, heed, consider." It's got a lot of these words that if we listen and apply them to our lives, it will bring blessings upon us. And at the beginning of chapter 4, it says, "Hear, O children, the instruction of a father, and pay attention and be willing to learn, so that you may gain understanding and intelligent discernment." So that's where some people run into problems, because they think they know it all and they won't be attentive and listen to see if maybe there's an area that could be improved over what they believed or what they thought or how they conducted their business or whatever, their finances. 4 and 5 says, "He taught me and said to me, 'Let your heart hold fast to my words. Keep my commandments and live. Get skillful in godly wisdom. Acquire understanding. Actively seek spiritual discernment, mature comprehension, and logical interpretation.'" So, "Do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth." So when we're taught what God wants us to do, when we let Him lead us, we will acquire spiritual discernment and mature comprehension and logical interpretation. When we keep the commandments, we live. And we live a better quality life. And many times we live a longer life because we've heeded what God has told us. Okay. chapter 4, verses 20 through 23. My son, pay attention to my words and be willing to learn. Open your ears to my sayings. Do not let them escape from your sight. Keep them in the center of your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and healing and health to all their flesh. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. And then verse 26 says, consider well and watch carefully the path of your feet, and all your ways will be steadfast and sure. 27 says, do not turn away to the right nor to the left, where evil may lurk. Turn your foot from the path of evil. Basically, be careful what you do. Guard your heart. Beware of your thoughts, your attitudes. Cast down all wrong thoughts. Remember the little kid's song about be careful little eyes what you see. And then it says be careful little ears what you hear. Be careful little mouth what you say. You know, be careful little hands what you do. Be careful little feet where you go. All of that is tied into our prosperity, is tied into our wealth, is tied into doing the right things which will lead us to the blessings that God wishes to bestow upon us. So that he will say, good and faithful child, you have done right by what I gave you. I will give you more. I will bless you with more. And we're not doing it with the attitude of wanting more, but if we're doing it to please God, he will give us more. Okay. Now let's go to chapter 5 and see what we can consider. And we all know this stuff, but I have known a lot of things and not done them. So we need to grade our own papers. If a lot of the stuff that we know we're not doing, we need to ask for God's help to correct some areas in our lives so that we can do them. And it will all affect our prosperity or our wealth in life. All right. Proverbs 5, 8 through 10. Says, let your way in life be far from her, which it's talking about the immoral woman, or the immorality. So let your way in life be far from immorality. Don't go near the door of her house. Avoid even being near the places of temptation. Just to put it plain and simple, if you don't want to be tempted to gamble, don't go to the places where they gamble. It's not that necessarily that gambling is a sin, but when it controls you, it definitely is a sin. You must control it. Well, don't tempt yourself. My mother used to tell me, nobody really knows that they're going to be an alcoholic till they actually drink and become one. If you never take that first drink, you don't have to worry about being an alcoholic. You know, prevention is a good idea. I'll tell you where my weak spot was. Years ago, I liked entering sweepstakes. And the one I entered in the most, I entered some in clearinghouse sweepstakes, and then I entered some of Finger Huts sweepstakes that they had. Well, number one, it's a very slim chance anybody will win. Yeah, somebody does, but a very slim chance. That's not the way to increase your money. In fact, what it did is they'd send catalogs of things to buy that tempted me to buy things I didn't need. And I yielded, and I bought. And then they encouraged me, the Fingerhead encouraged me to make payments on them. And if I got them paid off by such and such time, I wouldn't have to pay any interest. The trouble is, I never could get them paid off by that time because I was buying stuff I didn't have money to buy and still meet the needs of the family. So I soon learned that if I don't look at those catalogs and throw them in the trash when they come in the mail, if I don't look at the sweepstakes temptations to enter them, I won't look at the catalogs. So if I stay away from what causes me temptation, I do better at paying what I'm supposed to pay bill-wise and meeting the needs. And so, but it took a few mistakes before I learned that. You probably have your own situation completely different from mine that you have learned. Stay away from that. If going and walking around the mall tempts you to buy some stuff you can't afford to buy that you really didn't need anyway, then don't walk around in the mall. Stay away from it. I mean, these are not serious things, but Satan uses the things that are sly and sneaky and not serious looking to get us to do things that will harm us. Let's see. Verse 9 says, "Or you will give your honor to others and your years to the cruel one, and the strangers will be filled with your strength, and your hard-earned wealth will go to the house of a foreigner who does not know God." I don't know if the people that run companies that send catalogs are Christian or non-Christian, but I do know Satan can use those catalogs to tempt us. Or online now, it's even worse because you can just go online and order whatever you see that you think you like and that you want. So the temptations are everywhere. We just need to learn where they are and try to stay away from those places. It's basically because we don't need our hard-earned wealth to go where we don't really want it to go. And how many things have we bought that we thought we wanted that we don't even know what we did with anymore? How many things in my past did I put on a credit card and was still paying on it when I no longer remembered what I did with it? A lot more than I want to care to try to count. So I'm glad I cut those credit cards up, got them paid off, and don't try to charge anything else again. If I can't afford to do it, I don't do it. I don't need it that bad. I don't go out on Black Friday, and I'm not trying to be judgmental. If you go out on Black Friday, that's to buy whatever they've got on special. That's between you and God. But I look at it this way. I don't need it, so why do I go and put myself through all of that to buy something I think I want, and then 2 or 3 days later change my mind and don't even like what I bought? That doesn't make sense. So I don't do that. At work, we're not allowed to buy things on the clock. Sometimes things will go on clearance to a real cheap price, or be a manager special at a real cheap price. And I don't try to find a way to hold them back. That's really against the rules, and if you're caught going against the rules, you can lose your job. You're not allowed to set stuff back while you're on the clock. My attitude is, if God really wants me to have it, and I still feel the same way about it, that I really want it and think I need it, after I get off the clock, then it was meant to be. If it's no longer there, if they're all sold out, then I didn't need that. God knew I didn't need that, so he didn't make it possible for me to buy it after I got off work. So anyway, that's just some examples. What? Oh, the relatives, yeah, except for I'm not supposed to be on the phone on personal calls when I'm on the clock. I have to wait till my break or my lunch. When you're on your break, that's the 15-minute breaks are the only times you're on the clock that you can make a phone call if you do it from the break room. So anyway, there you have it. Are you encouraging in the wrong direction? I think he's just stating things he's heard of other people doing. Okay, now I would like us to go to chapter 6. And I wrote down as my thought after reading chapter 6 to apply correction of errors in your life as needed. And this is something I've tried to do before Chuck passed away towards the end of his life, and afterwards. And it's not easy, especially when it involves a relative or somebody you love. But chapter 6, verse 1 says, "My son, if you have become surety, guaranteed a debt or obligation for your neighbor, if you have given your pledge for the debt of a stranger or another," it says outside your family, but that was not really in the Bible. That was I don't know if that was Joyce Meyer's comment or whether it was somebody else's, but that's not what was in the original translation. I think that you need to be careful about guaranteeing a debt or obligation for anybody. Because what you're saying is, if they can't pay, I'll pay. And Chuck and I tried to help out a couple of our kids. So basically, we went against scriptures when we did, because the way we chose to help was not helping them to help themselves. It was just flat out giving out money to do something for them, and they were going to pay us back. Well, that caused a lot of trouble, and we really didn't get paid back. And so then that caused hard feelings amongst the family and stuff. It would have been better if we helped them figure out ways they could pay for, with their own hard labor and work, whatever item they wanted. And so we learned the hard way that God put that in there not to be mean, not to say we can't help people, but we've got to be careful that we're helping, not enabling them. Because lots of times what we do when we just flat out give it to them and they don't have to earn it for themselves or learn how to earn it for themselves, every time they get in a pinch, they come running to you for you to help them get out of that bind. And that's not good. They're not learning how to stand on their own 2 feet. They're just going to keep repeating that and using you all the time. And that's not good. And God knew that. That's why he stuck that in there. Anyway, he goes on to talk about getting yourself out of that trap. So when we do make mistakes with our finances or anything in life, we need to take time to evaluate what we did and why it was a mistake, and figure out a plan to where we don't fall into that same thing. That's what I meant by correction of errors. Businesses do that. When I was a manager of a couple of departments at my job, there were certain times each month where we were to write a correction of errors in regards to, say, like Black Friday or Easter or whatever happened, and how we did it as a store and how we did it as a manager or a department manager, what we could have done that would have been better, what we did that was good, what we did that wasn't so good, and the outcome of it. And they called it correction of errors. And we had to literally write it down. That was at the beginning of my experience, so it was probably about 20 years ago. And it's an eye-opener when you stop and think about it. And so I've been trying to apply that to, like, my budget. I look to see or know the state of my flocks, and I look to see what I did right and what I did wrong. And after I've written all that on paper, it's easy to see what I did right and what I did wrong, and what I can do now and in the future to keep doing right and to stay away from the wrong, and how I can correct whatever I did wrong, because there's always consequences that come with the wrong. One of my favorite verses in chapter 6 is verse 6. Go to the ant, O lazy one, observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief, overseer, or ruler, she prepares her food in the summer and brings in her provisions of food for the winter in the harvest. How long will you lie down, O lazy one? When will you arise from your sleep and learn self-discipline? When we work hard to earn that money, and God has allowed us to have it and made us overseers over what he has given us, we need to do what we know is right to do. If we know and plan to do what is right, we will pay our bills on time, and we will save being charged interest and late fees and bounce check fees, and you name it. We will save that money. We'll have that much more money to do good things with. So the ant does not procrastinate. How does the ant know what to do? God. That's what we need. We need to depend on God so that we know what to do. And then we need to do it right away. Don't put it off for another day. Do it now. Unless God is telling you to wait another day. You know, always put God first. I wanted to read this little PowerPoint thing that was written here in as a thought. We can learn a lot when we read about the ant, which works and provides for itself with no supervision. People who must always have someone else pushing them to do things rarely do something great. Those who only do what is right when someone is looking won't get very far either. We should be motivated from within and live our lives before God, knowing that he sees all and trusting that our reward will come from him. We don't always have to have a reward from some person. The rewards we get from God should be good enough. Okay. Chapter 7. Verse 1 says, "My son, keep my words and treasure my commandments within you so that they are readily available to guide you." Keep my commandments and live. That's verse 2. "And keep my teaching and law as the apple of your eye." So, if we realize that the rules God has made are not rules to keep us from enjoying our lives, it's to help us enjoy it more. And if we understand it and remember it and do it and treasure it, it will help us in all areas of our life, including our finances. All right, chapter 8. Verses 12 through 21, and then I'm going to stop. All right, chapter 8, verses, what did I say? 12 through 21. Okay. "I, godly wisdom, reside with prudence, good judgment, moral courage, and astute common sense. And I find knowledge and discretion. The reverent fear and worshipful awe of the Lord includes the hatred of evil, pride and arrogance, and the evil way, and the perverted mouth." So we should hate those things. Verse 14, "Counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding, power and strength are mine." Verse 15, "By me kings reign, and rulers decide and decree justice." That's the godly wisdom. Verse 16, "By me princes rule, and nobles, all who judge and govern rightly." Verse 17, "I love those who love me, and who seek me early and diligently will find me." Verse 18, "Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness, right standing with God." 19, "My fruit is better than gold, even pure gold, and my yield is better than choicest silver." Verse 20, "I, wisdom, continuously walk in the ways of righteousness, in the midst of the paths of justice." Verse 21, "That I may cause those who love me to inherit wealth and true riches, and that I may fill their treasuries." So, when we value wisdom, as we should, and understanding that is from God, and we apply it to our life, and we have the right attitude about doing things God's way, we will find that we are truly blessed in ways that maybe cannot be added up like money, but will be valuable just like money is in this world in order to purchase that which we need to live on. And we will be blessed by God. And so those are things that go along with finances that lots of times people don't consider. And I just thought it was neat that in Proverbs, this book of wisdom, I mean, you can probably look around you and see some very prosperous businesses, and after reading Proverbs and studying Proverbs, and of course there's more to it than what I read, you can probably see how the ones that are trying to do right in their business have successful businesses. the ones who treat others right as best as they can, not just financially, but in behavior, relationships, whatever. God blesses them in ways that bring them confidence and comfort and peace. And so that's all I have today in regards to things that we need to learn in regards to being prosperous through Proverbs. And we will study on the teachings of Proverbs 9 and on at a later time. Does anybody have a comment they want to make on anything?